Welcome to today's Explainer. Okay, let's just dive right into this, because the artificial intelligence landscape is going through an absolute earthquake right now, and sitting right at the epicenter is DeepSeek. For years, the absolute most powerful AI models have essentially been locked behind closed doors, right? Developers, businesses, we all had to access them through these super strict APIs. We were basically just renting brainpower from tech giants who controlled literally every parameter, every update, and every single rule. Well, DeepSeek completely flips that script. It changes the entire conversation around AI governance, control, and accessibility by literally handing the keys to the engine over to the public. But as we're going to see today, ripping the lid off that proverbial black box is a massive double-edged sword. You're getting unprecedented freedom, absolutely, but you are also inheriting an unprecedented amount of risk.
So, here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll explore open weights, open possibilities. Second, known technical limitations. Third, the burden of governance. Fourth, safety and privacy risks. And finally, we'll wrap things up with the deployer's dilemma. I promise you a totally fluff-free, highly pragmatic look at both the incredible freedoms and the really heavy responsibilities of using DeepSeek.
Section 1. Open weights, open possibilities. Let's start with the really exciting stuff. To understand this shift, we have to look at the baseline difference between DeepSeek and those heavily locked down models you're probably used to. DeepSeek is an open weight model. This means the underlying parameters, the actual mathematical brain of the AI, the literal weights connecting its neural network, are just out there for you to use. You're no longer just sending a prompt to some mystery server in California and crossing your fingers that the provider doesn't randomly change their pricing structure or their censorship rules overnight. No, you have the actual keys. And for a business, that is a total game changer. It means zero vendor lock-in and complete sovereignty over how your artificial intelligence actually operates.
When you hold those keys, the possibilities open up dramatically. Think about it. You can run these models entirely locally on your own hardware. Imagine a startup handling super sensitive legal documents. They don't want to send proprietary client data out to a centralized third-party cloud. Well, now they can just run DeepSeek totally offline on their own machines. You can fine-tune the models on your own proprietary data to make it a hyper-specialized expert in your specific niche. You can even distill them. Distillation is basically taking all that vast, generalized knowledge from a massive teacher model and compressing it down into a much smaller, highly efficient student model that literally costs pennies to run. DeepSeek explicitly lets you modify the behavior independently of their hosted services. There's no centralized bottleneck here. It is just pure, unadulterated flexibility.
Section 2. Known technical limitations. Now, we need a bit of a reality check.
All that freedom is totally exhilarating, but you really have to stop and ask. So, is the model perfect? Does all this incredible open weight power come flawlessly out of the box, ready to run your entire enterprise without a single hitch? The short answer, straight from the source? No, not even close.
DeepSeek publicly acknowledges several really critical technical flaws. The model hallucinates, meaning it generates incorrect or completely fabricated information. It might omit important facts or spit out outdated content, giving you advice that was maybe true 2 years ago but is totally useless today. But here is the real trap, the thing you have to watch out for. It makes reasoning errors despite appearing incredibly confident. A hallucination isn't always some jumbled, weird mess of incoherent words. Often, it's a beautifully formatted, highly articulate, grammatically flawless paragraph that is just fundamentally, factually wrong. It won't sound confused. It's going to sound like the absolute smartest, most certain expert in the room. And that makes catching those errors incredibly tricky if your team isn't paying very, very close attention.
Section 3. The burden of governance. Because the model is imperfect, we have to talk about who exactly is policing this thing. Since the model is minimally policed by its creator, the heavy lifting of governance falls entirely on someone else. And spoiler alert, that someone else is you. DeepSeek's own policies are remarkably clear on this. They explicitly state you must require human verification for important decisions such as legal, medical, financial, employment, insurance, housing, or educational matters. Listen, this isn't just a suggestion. AI-generated content from DeepSeek is not professional advice. If you're deploying this in any scenario that has a material effect on human life or business, like a bank automating loan approvals or a clinic triaging patient emails, you absolutely must have strict human review protocols. You cannot just automate the final decision and walk away.
When you contrast DeepSeek's stance with the user's reality, it is a pretty stark trade-off. DeepSeek implements safety measures, sure, but they openly admit they're imperfect. They retain the right to suspend accounts or modify their hosted policies at any time.
Meanwhile, your responsibility as the user is absolute. If you deploy this on your own servers, you own the outputs. You are fully responsible for the submitted content. You must provide that human oversight. DeepSeek is taking a very hands-off approach to downstream use here, meaning you can't blame the vendor anymore if the AI gives a customer bad information. The accountability rests squarely 100% on your shoulders.
Section 4. Safety and privacy risks. Okay, time to escalate the stakes a bit.
We are moving beyond just technical hiccups now and stepping into the realm of major security vulnerabilities. Researchers and security analysts have been digging deep into DeepSeek, and what they've found is definitely concerning. The models are susceptible to jailbreaks and prompt attacks, which means crafty users can trick the AI into bypassing its own rules by feeding it complex role-play scenarios. There are serious risks of adversarial manipulation, where someone intentionally sneaks hidden text into a prompt to purposely cause the AI to leak information. But honestly, the most crucial danger is potential safety degradation after fine-tuning. Remember earlier when we talked about how great it is to freely modify the open weights? Well, the danger there is that by heavily customizing the model on new data, you can very easily, even accidentally, strip away its initial ethical alignments. You might set out to build a highly optimized coding assistant and inadvertently create a model that has completely forgotten its safety guardrails against generating malicious code.
And beyond the actual code, there are intense global privacy and data concerns. Analysts have flagged serious issues regarding data storage practices, cross-border data transfers, and overall regulatory compliance. Look, if your company operates in a highly regulated sector, healthcare, finance, government contracting, where your data physically sits and how it's routed is a massive deal. Sending sensitive user information across international jurisdictions can instantly violate strict data residency laws like GDPR in Europe or specific state laws in the US. And these aren't just hypothetical legal fears. We're impartially reporting the facts here. Several government agencies globally, including in the United States, have actually imposed restrictions or outright banned the usage of DeepSeek on official devices. The national security and regulatory implications are being taken very, very seriously around the world.
Section 5. The deployer's dilemma. Let's synthesize everything we've talked about so far.
We've seen the freedom, we've seen the flaws, the governance rules, the security landscape, and it all creates a very clear balancing act. On one hand, model availability is open. Fine-tuning freedom is broadly permitted. That is the incredible value proposition drawing developers in droves. But in exchange for that freedom, output ownership is assigned completely to you. Human oversight is mandatory for high-impact decisions, the built-in safety controls are present but imperfect, and your specific implementation is going to be subject to heavy regulatory scrutiny. Essentially, you are trading centralized safety nets for decentralized freedom.
And that brings us to the core thesis of this entire explainer. DeepSeek's open-weight ecosystem absolutely gives organizations way more control over deployment, but it simultaneously shifts the massive responsibility for safety, security, compliance, and monitoring right onto the deployer. You're no longer just casually using a cloud-based service. By downloading and running these open weights, you effectively become the risk management department, the compliance officer, and the ultimate safety backstop for that specific AI. It's an immense amount of power, for sure, but it demands a totally new level of operational maturity to handle it without getting burned.
So the control has officially shifted from the provider directly to you. You've got the weights, you've got the power, and you've got the liability. So I'll leave you with this final vital question to think about. Is your organization truly ready for the responsibility of deployment? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking the hard questions and keep learning.